Welcome back. In the last session, we had discussed about various elements introducing retail management. We had discussed about the characteristics of retailers. We had discussed briefly about how retailers add value to both the manufacturer's marketing function and also as to how retailers add more utility and more value to the customer. We also discussed few elements of what are important channel mechanisms that operate in the marketplace. We discussed about why channels are important. We discussed predominantly about the selective, intensive and exclusive distribution mechanisms. We also discussed a little bit about multi-channel retailing, or why the manufacturer or why companies at times like to use different channels to reach out to the customer. We discussed about the mechanisms by which multi-channels operate. We also discussed about channel conflict and power among channel members, and we discussed about how power can be used effectively in order to create a more integrated and a more efficient channel mechanism when it comes to multi-channel operations. We also discussed towards the end of the last session about this concept called omni-channel retailing, wherein you have all the different channels that you operate in working seamlessly with one another so that you can have lesser conflicts and more integration between channel partners. Now, today we are going to discuss a little bit about the Indian retail context. Then we will get into different retail formats that exist, and we will introduce the retail strategy in the subsequent sessions. Now, if you I had mentioned to you in the last session that during the course of this entire interaction that we have, every time you go to the retail space, try to see if you can connect what you discuss in these classes to what you see in the real world, because it will give you much more deeper understanding about the retail management and retail marketing scenario. Because many times retail is more application oriented rather than theoretical, so it requires you to have a very close pay a very close attention to what is happening in the real world. Now, to introduce about what is the retail scenario or the retail landscape in India, we have to first of all understand that the retail market in India is quite big, and it is in a period of accelerated growth because of a lot of technological, a lot of cultural and a lot of demographic changes that customers are currently undergoing, and the market as such is very suited at this point of time for a lot of retail players to emerge and grow and make a dominant mark in the Indian retail landscape. Now, if I take the retail market per se, you might find that roughly around 10% of the country's GDP can be accounted to the retail market, which in itself makes retail quite a very substantial and quite a very big segment of the entire country's economy. And it also contributes to around 8% of employment of the entire nation. So you can think about the number of people who are directly associated with retailing operations in the country. This include all the people who are working with organized retail channels. These include all the people who are working with unorganized retail mechanisms, etc. So because of the fact that retail is such a big contributor to the country's GDP, and because of the fact that almost 8% of people are employed in retail, we have a very significant market for retail operations in India, and that is the reason why, if you look, there are a lot of global companies which want to come and capture this market. To talk about the kind of market scenario that we have, the retail market was almost 670 billion plus in the last year, which is quite a substantial amount of customers and substantial amount of business that happens through the retail mechanisms in India, and it is expected to reach almost 1.1 trillion US dollars worth in the year 2020, which is the next year. So the growth of Indian retail is quite big when we are considering the time frame between 2017, where it is around 670 billion US dollars worth, to around 1.1 trillion when it comes to 2020. And among all the different categories of products that are being sold as retailing in India, you might find that FMCG sector, which is one of the sectors that can be easily identified to be the retail operations, has a compounded annual growth rate, or the rate at which the FMCG retailing is growing is around 20% or 20% plus, and it's estimated to reach around 103 billion plus in the year 2020, which again is a very promising and a very positive aspect when it comes to the market and retail operations in India. It definitely shows that there is a positive outlook towards the market, and the market has a positive outlook towards consumption, and it also gives you opportunity to emerge as a very strong player in case you have a lot of disruptions and innovations which are coming up in the marketplace. You would have very clearly seen that many a times a lot of companies which come into the market are trying to create a space for themselves. Either they have very niche or very specific offerings that they are providing to customers. Say for example, the apparel segment, you might find that there are a lot of companies which have come into the market wherein they are trying to create more trendier, more fashionable and more up to date apparels to customers at a very affordable rate. So rather than a few years ago when you had clothes from a lot of branded companies being not affordable to a lot of people, today a lot of organized retail players have their own fashion departments. Say for example, Ajio or for example Fashion by Big Bazaar, etc., are companies which are now making fashion affordable to a lot of customers and also trying to make sure that a lot of customers can come out and consume a lot of things. Similar is the case of disruption and innovation that is happening in the online space, wherein a lot of companies are now trying out a lot of new categories of products in the online space. Yesterday I had mentioned, the last session I had mentioned about the company called Lenskart, which now started off a business which was traditionally considered to be dominated by physical players, wherein you had specialized opticians who were now taking care of the spectacle related requirements of customers and thereby providing them with the kind of specs that they require. Now this entire business was taken online, and a large market is today moving towards the online space, and Lenskart is trying to dominate this place because of the kind of offerings, because of the kind of technology and because of the kind of intelligence that is brought in to the entire offering that is provided to the customer. The Indian market, like you would understand, is dominated by a lot of companies, a lot of small and standalone retail stores. Often these stores are considered to be similar to the mom and pop stores that operate in the West, and in India we generally call them Kirana stores. So if you generally look into the number of such stores, you will find that 80 to 85% of the entire retail presence is dominated by such stores. It is not just in the groceries and FMCG category where such stores dominate. If you go to any kind of product categories, you will find that it is small and independent stores that dominate. Let it be apparels, let it be fashion accessories, let it be watches, let it be electronics, etc., etc. In many of these places, you will find that it has the market is dominated by a lot of small standalone retail stores. We will discuss about these small standalone retail stores in the coming subsequent segments as well. But predominantly the market is dominated by such people. Around 80 to 85% of the market share in 2017 was dominated by such people. That means that roughly around 14% or 15% is the current market when it comes to organized retail in India. But the good news for organized retail players is that the market is accepting organized retail in a larger in a greater sense today, and you have many more organized retail players who are getting into smaller cities, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, etc., and trying to explore the market in these cities. Traditionally, when the organized retail sector started booming off, and when you had a lot of these organized retail companies coming into India from international markets, or a lot of Indian companies who got into organized retail, this was around the 2006 2007 time period, you found that many of these organized retail stores were opened in either metro cities or big tier 1 cities. But today that is not the case. Many of these organized retail companies are understanding that the market is in smaller cities, in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which are traditionally being catered by small standalone stores. So that is why many of these organized retail chains like the Future Group, etc., are trying to get into smaller cities, tier 2, tier 3 cities, etc. So one, the number of organized retail stores is going to grow in the next coming years, and two, the number of customers who are associated with organized retail stores is also going to increase in the coming years. So by 2020, it is expected that almost 18 to 20% of the retail market will be controlled by organized retail organized players in the market. That still means that roughly around 80 to 82% will still be dominated by small standalone stores. So this is in a nutshell a little bit about the Indian retail scenario. Now we will discuss about types of formats and different kinds of retail entities and different kinds of mechanisms that exist in the retail format. We will also discuss about a few of the online as well as few of the offline retail players in the organized retail domain. We are going to consider the different types of formats that exist in the Indian retail market. We will have to look into them one by one. I am not going to go into specific category wise formats because that might be a little intuitive and little easy for you to understand. that there are different types of retail outlets that exist depending on the kind of product categories that we are talking about. Say for example, if you're talking about groceries, there are a set of retail organizations and retail formats that dominate. If you're talking about fashion, apparels, etc., there are some kind of retail formats that operate. If you're talking about say jewelry and other luxury goods, there are other retail formats that operate. But I'm trying to generalize all of this and discuss with you about what are the generalizable types of formats that exist in the retail scenario. Generally, if you look into the entire retail landscape in India, you would find that there is a very strong offline or traditional brick and mortar kind of retail system that exists, and also there is a emerging and a fast growing online retail presence as well. So this is how I am going to discuss between the online and offline space. Now let's start off with the offline space, because the offline space still dominates the entire retail presence in the country. In the offline or the traditional brick and mortar store kind of format, there are both organized as well as unorganized retail formats. Now, before I get into organized retail formats, let's take some time and discuss about the traditional unorganized retail formats that exist in the Indian market and how it evolved. If you look traditionally, many parts of India have had retail mechanisms that were not very organized, that were not conducted in a store fashion. Say for example, there have been a lot of fairs that were conducted in many parts of the country. Even today, if you go to many parts of rural India, you will find that there are fairs that are conducted. Now, fairs are generally annually conducted markets in one specific location. These are conducted during an auspicious occasion of the year, etc., wherein large number of buyers and sellers gather in one location year after year to probably exchange goods and products, right? So in many cases, these are going to be agricultural produce, these are going to be cattle, these are going to be a lot of jewelry, these are going to be apparels, etc. So this was one of the traditional formats of retailing that used to be predominant in the country in earlier times. So people used to wait for these annual events to happen, and people used to consume in bulk when it came to, or consume in large monetary values when it came to such fairs. And even today, if you go to some parts of the country, especially in semi-urban and rural parts of the country, you will find that such fairs still are conducted in an annual basis. You had the next format was mostly what is generally considered to be a shandis, or considered to be hearts, wherein you have such markets that are just generally conducted in a particular day of the week. So you might find that there are Monday markets that happen in again in semi-urban or rural locations in the country, where a lot of people gather in a small marketplace on a specific day of the week, and this specific day of the week becomes the business day of that particular heart or specific particular shandy, wherein people come together and they are now going to exchange products and a lot of services. Again, this is something that is very commonly seen. If you are not from the bigger metro cities or bigger tier 1 cities, you will still find such weekly markets that are taking place in a lot of these places. And traditionally, we have also had a lot of these small independent village shopkeepers, who are basically individual merchants who were taking care of selling a lot of textiles, spices, and jewelry, and they also had the habit of going door to door in the locations that they serve. So if you have a village shopkeeper in a particular village or in a particular small town, you might find that they are operating a small store in the village, but they also go door to door and try to sell a lot of these products, which predominantly were textiles, spices, and ornaments, etc. Another format or another important element of the retail system traditionally that existed in the country is the public distribution system. The public distribution system is a government-run chain of stores, or a chain of stores that is governed by the government, and it is basically part of the government's economic policy of ensuring that there is availability of food grains to a lot of people who otherwise might have found difficulty in getting all of these food grains reaching them. So that is where the government many years ago, many decades ago, thought about creating a public distribution system wherein a lot of food grains were made accessible to a lot of people all around the country. And many times food grains that are sold through these channels are heavily subsidized. And many times you might also find that these channels have now evolved to sell a lot of other products as well. Say for example, you have fuel, you have a lot of pulses, and such kinds of things are also provided as part of the public distribution system. So traditionally, these were the four types of retail mechanisms that existed in the country, which are generally now not being considered or not being used very extensively by a lot of consumers, because consumers' preferences are gradually moving away from the annual markets or the weekly markets or to village stores or public distribution systems. There are only few customers who are still reliant on these kinds of mechanisms. Most customers have access to a formal a kirana store or an organized retail store, because as the consumers demographic is changing, as the country is developing into a more organized and a more what do you say, developed economy, you are finding more accessibility to such kinds of stores in the country. So that is where we have a large number of kirana stores, which are basically small stores, independent stores owned by a single person or by a family, and they are catering to a small number of customers who are in the close vicinity in the neighborhood of the store. They generally are carrying fast moving consumer goods, which are going to be consumed by a lot of these consumers on an everyday basis. And you also have large format stores, organized retail stores, which basically are catering to a larger number of people. So these stores are going to be much more bigger in nature. These stores are going to cater to a larger number of customers, and these stores are generally located in the center or in the business district of the city or town where you're going to. So these are the different modes, or these are the different formats by which Indian retail has been operating in the traditional sense or in the offline sense. Now if you come to online retail, you would have found that online retail is also in a growing phase when it comes to India. Now there are different business models that exist in the online retail space. Every kind of retail activities that is done through the internet or by a virtual media is known as online retail or is known as e-retail. We are going to talk about different kinds of formats that exist and which are the formats that have been doing very well in India. Now, traditionally, if you look into the growth of online retail, you will find that there are a lot of online retailers who had been mail order retailers or catalog retailers earlier, who have now become online retailers. So, this is where many a times these retailers didn't really carry the kind of products assortment of products in their stores, but rather had more of a catalog or a printed list of products wherein you can order these products from the retailer as and when you require. Now, there have been some attempts of having catalog retailers in the online space in India, but it has not been exceptionally successful in India, or the customers have not been very keen to go through a mail order retailer or a catalog retailer in India. So that is why you won't find a lot of mail order or catalog retailers in India. Although there have been companies which have tried this, there have subsidiaries of companies like Shoppers Stop which have tried to have mail order retailing get going in India. It was called Gateway, but it was not very successful. So the operation of mail order or catalog retailers in India is not so great. Then you have direct marketing from manufacturers, which is something that is now picking up a lot of steam. You find that a lot of these companies which are in the manufacturing of different category of products, say for example, footwear manufacturers like Adidas have their own direct channel online from where you can buy products and consume products from them. Many times it adds a lot of convenience to customers, and the company can directly position a lot of products to the consumers without having a channel or without having middlemen who have to otherwise be present in the channel to make sure that the product reaches the consumer. In many of the mobile phone company cases, you will find that, say for example, Xiaomi and Apple and such companies have their own online presence wherein you can go to their direct portal or the company's website and procure products from them. So such kinds of internet operations is what I mean by direct marketing by manufacturers. And in the next segment, you'll also see that there are a lot of pure play e-tailers or internet malls, which basically are companies which try to bring in a purely internet based operation when it comes to retailing. Now companies like Amazon, companies like Flipkart, etc., are internet malls or marketplaces where a lot of sellers come together and try to sell their products on these platforms. So they are trying to dominate and creating that platform where a lot of different products can be brought through and a lot of consumers can come through, and it creates an ecosystem where there are a large number of consumers. So it makes sense for a lot of sellers to now position their products in these platforms. At the same time, there are a large number of products that are positioned in these platforms, which makes sense for consumers to keep going back to these products as well. So because of the value that it provides to both consumers as well as a lot of sellers who want to now sell their products, these formats have been exceptionally successful when it comes to India. There have been some of them who have been focusing on niche segments rather than being a marketplace per se. Say for example, in the textile space, you would find that companies like Myntra, company like Jabong, etc., have been creating their own space when it comes to apparels and fashion related products. So hence there have been companies which have been creating a niche in such kinds of scenario. Say for example, in the furniture segment, you will find that there is Urban Ladder, there is similar companies which are trying to create online presence and dominate that market. Like I mentioned to you, in the spectacles area, there is Lenscart. So every niche and every kind of specific product category also is being taken care of. And in some cases, you will find that traditional companies which have been in the brick and mortar space are now becoming click and mortar companies, or they are getting into more of a or closer to an omni-channel space, wherein they are now trying to create an online presence for themselves as well. Many of the organized retail players like Big Bazaar, like Chroma, like say for example, like More Stores, etc., are now trying to create their own online presence as well. So there are companies which are purely internet, which are called pure play e-tailers. There are companies which have been having a presence in both the traditional as well as on the internet space. So that is click and mortar retailers. So these are the different types of retailers who are present, or different types of retail formats in India which have been in the internet space. Now the reason why such internet companies have been able to do well is because of the advantages that they are able to provide to customers. Again, this is something that I had mentioned in one of the previous sessions. They provide the advantage of convenience, because you can sit at home and shop, and you can get the product delivered to your doorstep without having to go to the store and spending time and spending your effort by traveling, etc., etc. They give you better information because now the entire product information is available in the online space, which can now be compared with other products. You also get a lot of reviews which can help you. There is competitive pricing because many a times, because online retailers don't have the requirement of making sure that the product is available in the retail shelf, you are able to give the product away at a lower price than the physical retailer. You have the ability to shop anywhere at any point of time. You have the ability to reach to a global consumer base. You have better customer services that can be provided. Say for example, return of products, cash on delivery, etc., etc., are better customer services that can be provided by retailers. You have low capital cost. Again, like I mentioned to you, you don't have to invest in real estate to create that store. You don't have to invest in warehousing, and you don't have to take up real estate that is in the heart of the city, etc. You don't need to have that many employees who are taking care of the store, etc. So the capital investment required is much more less. And most important factor here is that the penetration of mobile technology, internet, and computers in the country is rapidly increasing, because of which today many customers have access to the internet, access to using smartphones, etc., because of which the online retailing is only going to grow in the coming years. Now, if I come back to the organized retail sector in India, and if we discuss about a few of the key players who are dominating the space, because that again is something that we have to do when we discuss about the retail scenario, or the retail landscape in India. We'll discuss about a few of these players and their operations in a very brief manner. I hope that you will also do a little bit of reading about a few links that I'm going to give in the description, wherein you will find that you have more details about all of these companies, their operations, etc., in a detailed fashion. Now, one of the major and most important entities in the retail space globally has been Walmart, who has been a giant. Walmart is from the US, and Walmart decided to get to India in the year 2006. And because of the restrictions on the foreign direct investments in India, which has been a hurdle for many international players to come and dominate a market like India, in 2006 Walmart decided to have a joint venture with Bharti. So that is where Bharti and Walmart came together in 2006 to open Best Price and Easy Day stores, because the foreign direct investment regulations at that point of time ensured that you cannot have 100% FDI when it comes to multi-brand retail, but you can have 100% FDI when it comes to the back-end operations, cash and carry operations when it came to retail. So that is where Walmart decided to take care of the cash and carry operations and start off with Best Price stores, while Bharati decided to have Easy Day stores to be the front-end retail operations. Now, over time in 2013, Bharti and Walmart decided to have this joint venture eliminated, and you had basically Walmart taking care of the Best Price stores, which is still a cash and carry operation, and Easy Day stores going ahead and doing an independent business in the retail space. Now, both these companies have been in the Indian market for some time. Similar case is when you find that another internationally renowned retailer has come to India called Metro, wherein they have started off Metro Cash and Carry, which again is in the back end operation, not exactly in the retail operations because of the FDI regulations in India. There have been other international players who have come in as well. Say for example, Tata and Tesco decided to have a joint venture called Trent, and Tesco is again one of the globally renowned retailers. So they decided to have a joint venture in India because of the similar regulations with foreign direct investment, and they decided to have Tata, Tesco and coming together as Trent Bazaars. You have also Start Bazaars, etc., which are part of such a joint venture. So there have been a lot of international players who have come down to India and tried to create a strong retail presence, because the market, like I told you earlier, is very big and rapidly growing because of the growth in the Indian economy. So that is why a lot of international players have come to India as well, and predominant among them have been Tesco, Walmart and Metro, who have been successful in creating a presence in India. Among the Indian companies which have tried to create a very strong presence include Future Group, wherein they have tried to create a lot of presence in the Indian market, and Future Group dominates the Indian grocery market segment with brands like Big Bazaar, Fashion Bazaar, etc., etc., etc. So there are different formats that you will find when it comes to Future Group, because you have different category of customers and different category of products. So that is why you will have different stores which are called under different brand names, and these stores need to identify themselves at catering to certain value for customers. So that is why under each of these retail brands or retail groups, you will find that there are multiple stores that exist. Another giant in the retail space with an Indian company is Reliance. You will again find that Reliance has multiple formats and multiple brands that are operating under them. Say for example, you have Reliance Fresh, Reliance Digital, etc., etc., which again cater to different kinds of customer groups or different kinds of product categories. Again, another one is Spencer Retail, which is also somebody who is trying to cater to a very niche kind of customer segment. Spencer's doesn't try to cater to the same kind of customer groups that Reliance and Big Bazaars cater, because Spencer Retail has products which are a little more, you can consider them to be a little pricey in many cases, and they are products that are generally considered to be bought by a high income group as compared to products that are available on Big Bazaars and Reliance stores, etc. Right. So everybody is trying to create their own niche and their own segment and target group, and that is how each of these companies have been positioning themselves. Aditya Birla has also been a very strong player in this space. They have their own more stores, they have Pantaloons, etc., which have been very strong brands, very successful brands in this space. DMart is again one example where you have created a niche for yourself by providing everyday low prices in India, and most of the times you will find that DMart is able to create their own specific strategy because of the locations of the stores that they identify and the kind of merchandise that they carry. They have been able to provide customers a lot of value when it comes to everyday low pricing kind of format. I will discuss about everyday low pricing in one of the subsequent sessions, but DMart has been able to provide that value to customers because of the kind of location specifications and because of the kind of operations that they have. So all of these companies have been trying to create a very strong presence when it comes to the traditional brick and mortar retail, organized retail presence in India. There have been also some companies which have now created their own presence when it comes to taking grocery shopping and grocery business to the online space. There are three different models of business operations that you can highlight here. You have online grocery shops like Big Basket, etc., who try to procure a lot of produce, green produce, etc., from farmers and try to warehouse them and try to have logistical capabilities that it can be taken to a lot of customers all around the country. They operate in many cities in the country. There are also hyper local aggregation models wherein companies like Grofers are dominating this space, wherein they try to aggregate a lot of local stores who can now cater to the specific demand of customers in that specific area. And also there are companies like More Stores and Godrej Stores, which are now getting into an omni-channel space, wherein they are trying to dominate both the physical as well as the online space. So this is in a nutshell about the different players that exist. I'll again request you to read through the article that I'm providing alongside this session, which will give you a detailed account of who are these players, what is their history, what is the kind of market presence they have, etc., etc., etc. So that is for this session. In the next session, we'll come back and discuss about different types of retail formats that exist. We'll try to talk about what are the factors based on which we can classify different retail companies or retail organizations into different formats, and we'll get into a retail strategy framework towards the end of the next two sessions. Thank you.